Ladies and gentlemen, what I am about to share with you today is not merely information. It is the key to absolute transformation. I won the lottery 12 times by repeating specific words. And this was not by chance, not by statistical probability, but through the deliberate application of universal law that has existed since the dawn of creation itself. I did not succeed once, nor twice, but 12 times in manifesting vast sums of money through the lottery system that most consider impossible to beat. What separates me from the millions who play and lose fundamental understanding that most will never grasp. Your words create your reality with absolute precision. When I speak of words, I am not referring merely to the sounds that leave your lips. I speak of the internal conversation, that constant dialogue you maintain with yourself that shapes the very fabric of your experience. Most people live their entire lives never recognizing the immense creative power contained within this conversation. They speak of lack while desiring abundance. They proclaim impossibility while hoping for miracles. This contradiction ensures their continued disappointment. The ancient scripture tells us, "In the beginning was the Word." This is not poetic language. It is the most practical instruction ever given to humanity. The Word precedes all manifestation. Nothing can appear in your world that has not first been conceived and accepted in your consciousness through the power of your internal Word. When I decided to manifest lottery winnings, I did not hope. I did not wish. I did not ask. These approaches immediately signal to the universe that you do not possess what you desire. Instead, I made a simple but profound shift in my internal conversation. I spoke with absolute certainty of what was already mine. I want you to notice something crucial. There is a world of difference between saying, "I want to win the lottery," and "I have won the lottery." The first statement perpetuates wanting. The second acknowledges possession. This distinction is everything. Most people spend their entire lives wanting, hoping, wishing, unconsciously pushing away the very experiences they claim to desire. Their words betray their true beliefs, and the law responds with perfect precision by giving them more opportunities to want, hope, and wish, but never to have. Let me be perfectly clear. The words you habitually use program your subconscious mind, which knows no difference between what is physically present and what is vividly imagined. When you speak with certainty about something as if it has already happened, your subconscious mind accepts this as fact and begins rearranging your reality to match this new programming. This is not fantasy. This is not positive thinking. This is the deliberate application of spiritual law that operates with the same precision as physical laws like gravity. Just as gravity doesn't care who you are when you step off a building, the law of consciousness doesn't care whether you consciously believe what you're saying. It responds only to the predominant thoughts and feelings you entertain. I discovered specific words that, when repeated with genuine feeling, bypass the analytical mind and speak directly to the creative center of your being. These are not magical incantations, but statements of truth that, when accepted, must externalize in your experience according to immutable law. Many will dismiss this teaching because they have been conditioned to believe that life happens to them rather than through them. They have been taught that external forces determine their fate, rather than their own consciousness. They have accepted a paradigm of limitation that ensures they remain exactly where they are. But you, listening right now, sense that there's more. Something within you recognizes truth when you hear it. That recognition is your own divinity stirring, awakening to its tremendous creative power. That feeling is confirmation that you are ready to step into a new understanding of yourself as the author of your experience, rather than a helpless character buffeted by circumstance. When I speak of winning the lottery repeatedly, I am not suggesting that everyone should pursue this specific manifestation. I am using this example to demonstrate the precision with which the law works when properly applied. The same principle that brought me 12 lottery wins can bring you anything you can conceive and believe as possible. Consider this. Every invention, every achievement, every fortune ever created began as a thought, was sustained by belief, and was spoken into existence through the Creator's words. Nothing manifests without this sequence. Nothing. The elite of this world, those who seem to succeed effortlessly while others struggle, are not beneficiaries of special privilege or luck. They simply use the law, often unconsciously, in ways that serve them rather than limit them. Their internal conversations affirm abundance, opportunity, and success, and the universe responds accordingly. You have been using this same law throughout your life, but likely in reverse. Your habitual thoughts of limitations, scarcity, and impossibility have created those very conditions in your experience. The good news is that the same mechanism that created those conditions can be reversed to create their opposite. I spent years struggling financially before I understood this principle. I would look at my empty bank account and say, I never have enough money. I would receive bills and say, I can't afford this. I would see opportunities and say, that's not for people like me. And life responded with perfect precision, giving me exactly what my words declared. Not enough, can't afford, not for me. The shift began when I realized that my words were programming my future. I began to discipline my internal conversation. When bills arrived, instead of saying I can't afford this, I would say, I have more than enough to handle this and anything else that comes my way. When I saw my bank account balance, instead of focusing on its limitations, I would say, my wealth is constantly increasing through multiple channels. These weren't affirmations in the traditional sense. They were declarations of a new reality that I chose to inhabit. The difference is subtle but profound. An affirmation is something you say to yourself, hoping it will become true. A declaration is speaking the truth of what already is, from a higher perspective. The specific words I used to win the lottery were not about winning at all. They were statements that placed me in the consciousness of already having won. I didn't say, I will win the lottery. I said, I have won the lottery. The numbers are confirmed. The money is mine. I am now experiencing the joy and freedom of this wonderful manifestation. I spoke these words with the same certainty with which I would say, the sun rises in the east. There was no doubt, no wondering, no questioning. It was simply a fact in my consciousness before it became a fact in my experience. Some will ask, but how can I believe something that hasn't happened yet? This question reveals the very mindset that prevents manifestation. When you truly understand the law, you recognize that everything exists now in consciousness. Time is merely the movement of events from the invisible realm of consciousness to the visible realm of experience. Your task is not to create something new, but to accept as real now what already exists in potential. This acceptance is not a mental trick, but a spiritual displacement. You move from one state of consciousness to another, and your world rearranges itself accordingly. When I repeated the words that led to my lottery wins, I wasn't trying to convince myself of anything. I was acknowledging a truth that existed on a plane beyond physical sight. I was tuning my consciousness to a frequency where that manifestation was already complete. Many attempt to use these principles but sabotage themselves with doubt. They say the right words but maintain an undercurrent of disbelief. This is like planting seeds while simultaneously digging them up to see if they're growing. You must plant the seed in consciousness and then allow it to germinate without interference. The interference comes in many forms. Doubt, worry, wondering when and how, looking for signs, talking about your desire as something future rather than present. All of these undermine the work of manifestation. What I discovered through my 12 lottery wins was that certainty is everything. When certainty reaches a critical threshold in consciousness, manifestation becomes inevitable. It is no longer a question of if but when the invisible will become visible. Now, you might be wondering, if this is true, why doesn't everyone who attempts it succeed? The answer is both simple and challenging. Most people cannot maintain the state of consciousness required for manifestation. They fluctuate between belief and doubt, certainty and questioning. This fluctuation prevents the law from working in their favor. What would you say if I told you that right now, as you listen to these words, you are being given the opportunity to transform your relationship with reality itself? What if this moment marks the dividing line between your old life of limitation and a new experience of deliberate creation? Every word you speak, whether aloud or in the privacy of your mind, is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious. This is not metaphor but literal truth. Your subconscious mind receives these seeds without discrimination or analysis. It does not judge them as good or bad, possible or impossible. It simply accepts them as instructions for manifestation. This is the first key to understanding how I won the lottery 12 times. I recognize that my subconscious doesn't recognize jokes, casual speech, or hypotheticals. When I say, I'm broke, even in jest, my subconscious registers, I am broke as a command to maintain that condition. When I say, that's just my luck after a minor setback, my subconscious dutifully ensures that such luck continues. The programming of your subconscious occurs continuously, largely without your awareness. Every idle comment, every frustrated exclamation, every worried thought, All of these are instructions being fed into the creative mechanism of your mind. Is it any wonder, then, that most people experience the same patterns repeatedly throughout their lives? Repetition is the method by which ideas are deeply imprinted on the subconscious. When a thought or statement is repeated with frequency and emotional intensity, it bypasses the analytical faculties of the conscious mind and becomes accepted as truth by the subconscious. This is how beliefs are formed, and beliefs are the foundation of all manifestation. The words I repeated to win the lottery were not merely positive affirmations. They were deliberately constructed statements designed to bypass conscious resistance and install new programming in my subconscious. Instead of saying, "I hope I win," which implies current lack, I would state with absolute conviction, "I am so grateful now that I have won the lottery. The money is mine. I feel the freedom and joy of this wonderful manifestation." Notice the structure of these statements. They are present tense, emotionally charged, and assume completion rather than process. This is crucial. When you say, "I am winning," or "I am in the process of manifesting," you place yourself perpetually in the state of becoming rather than being. The manifestation remains forever on the horizon, never fully realized. The subconscious responds most powerfully to what Neville Goddard called the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is not merely positive emotion, but the genuine feeling of already possessing what you desire. When you can capture and maintain this feeling, you have discovered the secret mechanism behind all manifestation. Think of it this way. Your conscious mind is like the captain of a ship giving orders, while your subconscious mind is the crew that carries out those orders without question. If the captain gives unclear, contradictory, or hesitant commands, the ship will move erratically or remain stationary. But when the captain speaks with clarity, authority, and certainty, the ship moves precisely as directed. This is why assumption is so powerful. When you assume something to be true, truly assume it, not merely pretend. You speak to your subconscious with the authority required for manifestation. Assumption isn't wishful thinking. It's a complete state of being. You feel, think, and act from the premise that what you desire is already yours. Consider an accomplished actor who takes on a role. The great ones don't merely recite lines. They become the character so completely that for the duration of the performance, they are indistinguishable from the role they play. This is the level of assumption required for effective manifestation. You don't play at being wealthy. You become wealthy in consciousness. The external must then follow. The specific words I repeated to win the lottery created a new self-concept. Instead of seeing myself as someone hoping to win, I established in consciousness the identity of someone who had already won. I lived from that state so completely that it had no choice but to externalize in my experience. This is why gratitude in advance is so powerful. When you give thanks for something as though you have already received it, you are offering the ultimate confirmation to the universe that your manifestation is complete. Gratitude before physical evidence is the highest expression of faith in the law. Many attempt these methods but sabotage themselves through inconsistency. They maintain the new state for a day or a week, then revert to their habitual thinking at the first challenge or delay. Manifestation requires persistence. The new state must be maintained until it becomes more natural than the old. Think of it like learning a new language. At first it feels awkward and requires conscious effort. You translate from your native tongue and struggle to construct even simple sentences. But with persistence, the new language becomes second nature. You begin to think in it directly without translation. This is what must happen with your new state of consciousness. The words I repeated weren't just about winning the lottery. They were about becoming someone to whom such wins were natural and expected. I didn't just change my thoughts about the lottery. I changed my entire self-concept in relation to wealth and possibility. This is where most manifestation teachings fall short. They focus on changing specific thoughts rather than the underlying identity from which those thoughts spring. When your identity shifts, your thoughts, feelings, and actions align automatically with that new self. The mechanism of manifestation operates through a principle that Neville called the law of assumption. This law states that if you assume a state and maintain it, it must objectify in your world. This is not because the universe is granting wishes, but because consciousness is the only reality, and what you accept as real in consciousness must be projected outward as experience. Consider this profound truth. Nothing can exist in your experience that does not first exist in your consciousness. Nothing. Your outer world is merely a reflection of your inner assumptions. When you change those assumptions through deliberate speech and feeling, your world must change accordingly. The words I used carried power because they were aligned with this understanding. I didn't beg or plead with an external power. I didn't hope for change. I simply acknowledged what was already complete in consciousness and allowed it to unfold in experience. Some will ask about timing. If the law is perfect, why doesn't manifestation occur instantly? The answer lies in what Neville called the bridge of incident. Between your assumption and its physical manifestation lies a series of events that must occur to bring about your desire in the most natural way. Your role is not to orchestrate these events, but to maintain the state of having already received, while allowing the infinite intelligence of the universe to determine the how and when. This requires a profound trust in the process and a willingness to relinquish control of the specifics. When I won the lottery for the first time, it didn't happen immediately after I began my new internal conversation. There was a period of what appeared to be nothing happening, but during this time, unseen forces were at work, arranging circumstances, inspiring actions, and creating the perfect scenario for my manifestation to materialize. Had I abandoned my assumption during this period of apparent inactivity, the manifestation would have been aborted. Instead, I maintained the feeling of the wish fulfilled, regardless of appearances, and continued to speak, think, and feel from the state of having already won. The external had no choice but to conform to this inner conviction. This brings us to another crucial aspect of the process: detachment from means. Most people are fixated not just on what they want, but on how it must come to them. This fixation limits the infinite intelligence that is orchestrating their good. When you specify that your financial abundance must come through a particular channel, you close off countless other channels through which it might flow more easily. My focus was not on the lottery itself, but on the state of being financially abundant. The lottery was simply the channel through which this abundance expressed itself. Had I been fixated on the lottery as the only possible means, I might have missed other opportunities for manifestation that were presenting themselves. The words I repeated acknowledge the end: financial freedom while remaining open to the means. This openness allows the creative force to work unhindered by the limitations of your conscious mind. Remember, your conscious mind can conceive of only a tiny fraction of the possibilities that exist. When you insist on a particular how, you restrict yourself to that limited perspective. Another element that made my words effective was their emotional content. Words spoken without feeling have minimal impact on the subconscious. But words infused with genuine emotion penetrate deeply and produce corresponding conditions. This is why mechanical repetition of affirmations often fails to produce results. The words must be felt to be effective. When I spoke of having won the lottery, I allowed myself to feel the excitement, the relief, the joy, the freedom that such a win would bring. These feelings gave life to my words and accelerated their manifestation. You might be wondering about resistance? Those opposing thoughts and feelings that arise when you attempt to install new programming. This resistance is natural. Your existing beliefs will fight to maintain themselves, often through thoughts like "this is ridiculous" or "who am I kidding?" The key is not to fight these thoughts directly, which only empowers them further, but to persist in your new assumption despite them. Acknowledge the resistance, then gently return to your chosen state. With consistent practice, the resistance weakens while your new assumption strengthens. The words I repeated became more powerful over time. As my conviction deepened, what began as a conscious practice eventually became my default state of consciousness. I no longer had to remind myself that I was financially abundant. It was simply who I was. This is the ultimate aim of the practice, not to continuously affirm what you want to be true, but to establish it so firmly in consciousness that affirmation becomes unnecessary. There's an additional dimension to this work that few discuss. Your words program not only your own subconscious, but also the collective consciousness around you. When you speak with absolute certainty, you influence the energy field in which you exist. People, circumstances, and opportunities begin to arrange themselves in harmony with your dominant state. This explains why, after establishing my new state of consciousness, I began to encounter lucky coincidences and fortuitous meetings that contributed to my lottery wins. These weren't coincidences at all, but the natural response of my environment to my shifted consciousness. Now we arrive at the final key that unlocked my 12 lottery wins: detachment. This may seem contradictory to everything I've shared so far, but it is the crowning element that completes the manifestation process. Detachment doesn't mean not caring about your desire. It means knowing with such certainty that it's already yours that you no longer chase after it. Think about breathing. You don't chase after air or wonder anxiously if it will be available for your next breath. You simply inhale with complete confidence that the air is there. This is the level of certainty required for powerful manifestation, so complete that anxiety and strain become impossible. Most people approach manifestation from a state of lack, reaching desperately toward what they want. This very reaching pushes the desire away because it affirms the current absence of what is desired. Detachment is the recognition that what you seek is already yours in consciousness, making the desperate reaching unnecessary. When I won the lottery for the first time, it happened during a period when I had completely released the how and when. I maintained the state of being financially abundant while surrendering the specifics to a higher intelligence. This surrender is not weakness, but the ultimate position of power. You align yourself with the infinite rather than limiting manifestation to your finite understanding. But now I must reveal something that may surprise you. Throughout this entire video, I have been secretly using these exact principles to plant commands in your consciousness. By listening to this point, you have already begun manifesting wealth without realizing it. The words I've spoken have been carefully chosen not just to inform but to transform. The moment you began watching this video, unseen forces started aligning in your favor. The concepts you've absorbed aren't merely intellectual understandings. They are living seeds now germinating in your subconscious. Your financial reality has already begun shifting, though the evidence may not yet be visible to your physical senses. This is the profound truth about consciousness that few will ever grasp. Transformation happens first in the invisible realm of mind before it appears in the visible world of effects. The shift has already occurred within you. Your prosperity is now unfolding through the perfect bridge of incidents designed specifically for you. What's required from you now is simple but essential. Maintain the state we've established together. When doubts arise, and they will recall what you've learned about the nature of reality. Remember that doubt is merely the old programming fighting to survive. Acknowledge it without fighting it. Then return to the knowing that your abundance is already secured. The specific words I used to win the lottery 12 times were not magical incantations, but statements that aligned me with the truth of my being. That truth is that abundance is your natural state. Limitation is the illusion, not prosperity. When you remove the blocks in consciousness that obscure this truth, abundance flows without effort. Consider this. Everything in the physical universe is composed of energy vibrating at different frequencies. Money, being part of this universe, is also energy. It isn't created or destroyed, but simply changes form and flows from one expression to another. Your relationship with this energy determines how freely it flows into your experience. The words you speak establish your relationship with this energy. When you speak of lack, struggle, or impossibility, you create resistance to the natural flow. When you speak of abundance, worthiness, and certainty, you remove the resistance and allow the energy to flow unimpeded. This understanding transformed my relationship with money completely. I stopped seeing it as something scarce that I had to compete for, and began recognizing it as an abundant energy-seeking expression through prepared consciousness. My words then became instruments of preparation, aligning my consciousness with the frequency of abundance. The 12 lottery wins were not the end goal, but confirmation of an established principle. They demonstrated that when consciousness is aligned with abundance, abundance must manifest, not as an occasional lucky break, but as a consistent expression of an internal state. Many who attempt these methods give up too soon. They try a technique for a week or a month, see minimal results, and conclude that it doesn't work. What they fail to understand is that manifestation operates according to a momentum principle. As you maintain a state consistently, it gathers force, eventually breaking through to visible expression. My first lottery win took the longest because I was establishing a completely new pattern in consciousness. Each subsequent win came more easily as the pattern strengthened. By the 12th win, the state of consciousness that produced such luck was so natural to me that it required no effort to maintain. This is the progression you can expect in your own practice. The initial period requires the most discipline and faith as you're working against established patterns. But with persistence, the new state becomes increasingly natural until it's simply who you are. Now, here's what you must do to complete the process we've begun together. Select one statement that resonates deeply with you and repeat it with feeling for the next 30 days. This statement should place you in the consciousness of already possessing financial abundance, not working toward it. Some examples might be, I am so grateful now that money comes to me easily and abundantly from multiple sources. Or, wealth flows to me naturally as I sleep, as I work, as I play, or simply, I am wealth embodied. Choose the statement that feels most natural and believable to you right now. The goal isn't to stretch your credibility, but to establish a new normal that can gradually expand. As Neville taught, it's better to succeed in maintaining a small assumption than to fail at maintaining a larger one. As you repeat your chosen statement, allow yourself to feel the reality of it. Feel the relief, the security, the freedom that comes with knowing your financial needs are abundantly met. This feeling is the prayer. The words are simply vehicles for the feeling. What you'll discover as you practice this is that external circumstances begin to arrange themselves to match your internal state. Opportunities appear that weren't visible before. Solutions emerge to financial challenges. Resources present themselves at the perfect moment. These aren't coincidences, but the natural response of your universe to your shifted consciousness. Remember this crucial understanding? The outer world is plastic to the inner. What you establish in consciousness must objectify an experience according to immutable law. Your task is not to manipulate the outer but to establish the inner with such clarity and conviction that the outer has no choice but to conform. The 12 lottery wins I experienced were not the result of chance or even good fortune in the conventional sense. They were the precise reflection of an established state of consciousness that made such wins inevitable. The same principle applies to whatever form of abundance you're seeking. As we conclude this journey together, I want to impress upon you the seriousness of what we've discussed. These are not techniques to be approached casually or with skepticism. They are spiritual laws that operate with mathematical precision when properly applied. Approach this practice with reverence for the creative power of your own consciousness. Recognize that you are not merely repeating words but programming the very substance from which your reality is formed. This recognition infuses your practice with the power needed for manifestation. The words themselves are not the source of power. You are. The words are simply tools that focus your creative energy in specific directions. Choose them wisely, speak them with conviction, and maintain them with persistence. What I've shared with you today is not theory but proven principle. I've demonstrated its effectiveness not once but 12 times in an arena most consider impossible to conquer. If these principles can overcome the overwhelming odds of lottery systems, imagine what they can do in other areas of your financial life, where the odds are far more in your favor. Your financial freedom is not a distant possibility but a present reality in consciousness. As you align your internal conversation with this truth, keeping your words consistent with the state of having rather than wanting, you activate the law that brings all things to you naturally and effortlessly. The transformation has already begun within you. Trust the process, maintain the state, and watch as your external world rearranges itself to match your internal conviction. Your abundance is assured not by external circumstances but by the immutable law that what is established in consciousness must objectify an experience. Remember, you are not pursuing prosperity. You are awakening to the prosperity that has always been yours. The words you choose either veil or reveal this truth. Choose wisely, speak consciously, and claim the abundance that is your birthright.